This tutorial will cover Chapter 4, Exercise 1. But before we get started with that, I thought it might be a good idea to spend a few minutes talking about some of the things that you've learned already and some of the things that might help you get a better understanding of how the website works within PHP. So let's start off by looking under your Chapter 4 EX1 starts. This is the first thing that the exercise wants you to do anyway, is to go into this start section for Chapter 4 Exercise 1 and run the application to see and make sure that it's running, and to make sure that you've got a good jumping off point to get the exercise taken care of. So the first thing let's do is let's run the application as requested, just to make sure it works. And a couple of things to take note of here. First thing on the left hand side is a list of categories. These are all pulled from the database, as we will see in a moment. Within this section here, there is the name of the category and then all of the items that are in that category, the code, the name, and the price, as well as a delete button for each one so that you can delete that particular item from that category. Down on the bottom we've got add product and another link called list categories. Now the lab, I want you to click on list categories, and that takes you to a page that's currently under construction. There's not a lot of activity over here. It's just giving you a basic framework and then giving you a link back to the page that you started on, which was list products. So let's click on that link, and that takes us back to where we were. Now the functionality on this page is, by default, the page starts with a listing of all of the products in the guitars category. If we click on another category over here on the left, like basses, you'll notice everything over here changes to all those items that are in the category of basses. And finally, drums. And there's the items that are in the drums category. The products that are, I should say, that are in there. There's also a link called add product. So let's click on that, and that takes us to an add product form, which you can see up here in the URL. The first thing we do is decide which category we're going to add a product to. So let's go to the drums category by using the drop down list here. Make up a simple code for KD. The name will be kick drum, and the price will be $199 even. Now when we click add product, control will be returned to the index PHP page, which was our main page that we came from. But this time, if you look under the drums category, you'll notice that we've got kick drum now, KD kick drum. They want you to delete any entries that you've added in here as well. So I'm going to go ahead and delete the two that I've added. Okay, just click the delete button, and it is immediately removed from the list. And this other one I added as well. So let's go take a look now at what makes all of this happen, and we'll start by opening up the index.php document under the Chapter 4 EX1 starts. One of the things you might want to do to give yourself a little more real estate here is on almost all of the windows here, but over here on the projects list, if you'll hover over this thing, it says minimize window. When you do that, it doesn't actually make it disappear. It just adds to this vertical list of tabs over here. So anytime you want it back, just come over here and click on projects, or just hover over it and it'll bring the list up. But when you click off of it or remove the mouse off of it, it will disappear and collapse back to the left hand side. Starting at the top of index.php, there is the require once database.php clause. This is simply the database connection information. It's just another PHP file that you see database here, database PHP, and database PHP here. It's broken out so that it can be reused on the top of every page. Let's open up database PHP and look at it. And in here you will find there is no HTML in this one. It's just a PHP code. It starts off with 3 variables. The first one is set to a very well-known named DSN. And this is a connection string for the database. Every different database has a slightly different connection string. MySQL uses this one. It starts off by saying what kind of database is it, a colon, the host that the database lives on. In our case, the database is on the same machine here, so it's localhost, and the particular database name within that database, and ours is MyGuitarShop1. Then we have a username. By default, it uses that MGS user that you created in an earlier exercise, and the password for that user. Now this section also introduces us to the try-catch block coding practice. That is to help us catch problems or exceptions that may occur. So what's going to happen is we're going to try to make a new database connection. They call it a PDO, a PHP data object. And that function requires 3 parameters: the database connection string, which is DSN, the username, and the password. If the connection is successful, control is passed around to the end of this routine and then exited back to wherever it was called from. If an exception occurs, or the way to say that is to say if an exception is thrown by anything during this process, it will be caught, or we will catch the exception with this catch section. These together are collectively referred to as a try-catch block of code. And we will talk later about how the exceptions are dealt with internally. But for now, what you need to know is that any problems, messages, or statuses, or any information that was encountered during the process of trying this procedure are caught and passed back in this variable called $E. And within $E, we can extract an error message, and then we can pass control to the database error PHP program and exit this procedure. So database PHP is maintained so that we can reuse it or call it from multiple places without having to repeat all of this code over and over again. You'll see here that in the index PHP, we do a require once database PHP. If we go to any of the other pages, and I'll open up the add product page just as an example, we have, when we want the database in this page, we say require once database PHP. So it's the same thing as repeating that code over and over again. All right, back in the index PHP module, we're going to see if a variable called category ID is not set. Remember, the is set is checking to see if it has a value. The exclamation mark in front is the not. So if category ID is not set, then we're going to try and retrieve the field from the page called category ID by using the $_get and placing the result here. If the category ID is still not set, which is probably because we're running the app, or the server for running the application for the first time, then we force category ID to be equal to 1. This just seeds the category ID so that the application will start up properly. Moving on down, we now need to run our database access. To do that, we load up a select statement and put it in the variable called $query. We run a $dbquery command passing that query into it, and the results come back into a variable called $category. And then we fetch that result set and then retrieve category name from within the result set and place it in a local variable called category name. Now notice we used category ID as part of our where clause. So, and up here you may remember we tried to gather category ID from other pages. If it didn't exist, we forced it to be 1. So in this case, the first time through, this is the same thing as saying select all rows and all columns from categories where category ID is equal to 1. Now we just go get all of the categories from the database. This is select everything from categories, order by category ID, Then we get all of the products by selecting all columns from products where category ID equals, there's that $category ID again, and we order those by product ID. And that ends the PHP section. Down inside the body of our HTML, we put up headers and a few other cosmetic things to make the page look like it needs to. Then down inside, close to the middle, we need to start accessing the database information and putting it out to the screen.